Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. I'll get into the origins of that at some point, but or at some time. We've only done 240 episodes of this. If you're a regular listener, you know why I'm Emil Amok and why this is Emil Amok's Takeout. I mean, which is kind of like a talk show. Now, here's why it's a talk show. It's a talk show because I have talk show implements. I mean, if you're watching on Twitter right now, you're seeing me, and I have some gizmos I throw up on the screen. But now I'm practicing, and I think I can unveil a trick. Like I can say, and then there was one. It's the talk show swish. It's a transition. I say a joke and I say, and that's why the chicken crossed the road. A technique. This isn't just some ordinary kind of whatever you call it, a vlog, a internet web based talk show. No. This is different. It's Emil Amok, Emil Guillermo, my takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I like to call this show WDAAAT. That's sort of like the nickname. What does an Asian American think? Because they never ask us. They never stop and ask us what we think. And there are considerable things out there right now, especially, which is why it's a good time to have the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs and the ALLs. That's all the rest of you if you're not an AAPI or an AAX. An AAX, Emil, what is that? I mean, lay it on me, man. What is an AA? Well, Asian American X, you fill in your ethnicity. Say you're an Asian American Uyghur. Would that be an AAW? No, that would be an AW. I don't know if they're Asian Americans, but an AA Uyghur would be an AAU. An Asian American Uyghur. And the Uyghurs are the reason why the world is looking at Beijing and looking at the Olympics askance. An Asian American askance. That's kind of like a talk show rim shot. Look at all the talk shows. They all have them, and they want to make a transition. They say, in other news, no, all right. So we're talking about the Uyghurs and the Olympics because we can't stop thinking about the Olympics now because it's all about Asian Americans. It's about us. And, a lot of people are looking at that and saying, wow, look, Chloe Kim tonight, Nathan Chen, like broke everything, broke all the records in short program individual men's. I think got something like a 13. He just obliterated the record. He was so much better. And everyone knows that Nathan Chen is the gold guy. He is the dominant men's figure skating guy, and people have said it. They're going to forget about all his falls in the previous Olympics because he was good then and he failed to come home with the medal. Now the Olympics are his, right? I mean, he proved it last night in the short program. And even he wasn't the big story. I don't think he was the big story at the Olympics. The big story remains Eileen Gu. We're going to talk about Eileen Gu when we get to the 2:00 hour because 2:00 is when the show officially begins. I mean, I say try to get here at 1:45 because that's when we do the pre-show. We talk about, well, maybe they have a good defense and they have, it's like they're talking about the Super Bowl now already, right? It's like one big pre-show to the game, which is, this is Tuesday as I talk. The game is on Sunday. The pre-show has begun, right, on the Super Bowl. So this is like, I I come on at 1:45 p.m. Pacific is kind of like my pre-show to the 2 o'clock, but we're here 2 p.m. Pacific live. We're live on the live stream because this is what we do. Emil Guillermo is Emil Amok. What does an Asian American think? This is show 240. And if you're saying, okay, well, if you're here at 150 mil, you start at 2. I guess this shows your grand beneficence, giving us 10 extra minutes, right? Well, in fact, it is 10 extra minutes and a swoosh. And, so in this time before we get, and I'm going to talk about Eileen Gu and what I really think about her gold medal performance last night. I'm going to talk about it at 2 o'clock, but I do want to talk about some other things. We call this, what does an Asian American think? Because, they always have these polls and they never ask an Asian American. I said that. Now, I like Nate Cohn, the 538 guy, and he does a thing today in the New York Times. He says, Americans are frustrated with the pandemic. These polls show how much. And he cites a Yahoo News YouGov survey that found that 46% of respondents, they always say respondents because they don't know. It's a general, right? Thought Americans should learn to live with the pandemic and get back to normal. Well, just 43% thought we need to do more to vaccinate, wear masks, and test. Now, there was another poll that was done that said fully 70% of Americans agreed with the statement that it's time we accept COVID is here to stay and we just need to get on with our lives. That was in a recent poll by Monmouth University. And that survey found that support for vaccine mandates has dropped to just 43% from 53% in September, while support for masking and social distancing guidelines dropped to 52% from 63% over the same period. Now, I just mention this because they kind of like homogenize all the numbers, but I ask you, did anyone ask you, an Asian American, what you think about masking or the pandemic or where we are now? I mean, frankly, I think the problem is you go out in these research techniques now, they don't have enough Asian Americans to say, well, this is what Asian Americans think. So I got a sample of me, and I'll tell you, keep your mask on, get vaccinated if you haven't been, keep your distance. We're still fighting this thing. And I don't fully agree with the statement that it's time we accept that COVID is here. It's time to accept COVID is here to stay and we just need to get on with our lives. No, we got to keep fighting. Keep your mask. 70% of Americans said that. But like I said, that this is an Monmouth University poll. But they did ask an Asian American like me, who's in his gong closet. I mean, I go out. I go out. If I had to fly somewhere, I might do that. But frankly, I'm still a little skittish about that myself. I might drive somewhere. But I think we're right at a time when we're just a few more informational bits away from really finding out where the path is out of the virus. How are we going to deal with normal, or how do we get to a normal that we can live with? I'm not one of those, I'm so frustrated, I want to get out of here. It's been over 2 years. Hang in there. Stay the course. A lot of Asians have come from countries where they were war torn, they were indigent. I mean, through the years. I'm not talking about just refugees from Vietnam or refugees from Southeast Asia or other parts of Asia. the Bhutanese. I mean, I'm even talking about my dad's day. I'm going to talk about him later on too, because today would have been his birthday. But you think about when my dad came here, he was born under the American flag when the Philippines had just been through a war that started in 1898 and lasted till 1902. Millions of Filipinos died, civilians, and Americans took over, conquered the Philippines, colonized it. That's what my father left. He was from a region up north. I would say he left a war-torn Philippines, and the people who tore it up, the U.S. government. So I just say right now, when it comes to COVID, stay the course for now. You know, we want to say, look, enough's enough. We want to go along with that statement where 70% of Americans say, hey, it's time we accept COVID is here to stay. We just need to get on with our lives. Okay, I get it. We're tired. We're frustrated. But we're just a few more bits of information away from understanding what's going on with Omicron and the new variant, BA.2. I mean, in some countries it's been controlled. In some countries it's been out of control, but it is in the United States now. We just need to see, well, we need to study what the reaction is to that before we drop our guard. I mean, even a boxer who drops his guard is ready with the counterpunch and is ready to duck and ready to slip a punch coming at him. We have to be nimble and aware. And the best way you could do it with an opponent you can't see, the virus, is stay masked, keep your distance, be careful. It's not over. It's not over. It could be over. It could be over if we just are a little more united in this fight against the virus. And that means, look, it's not too late to get vaccinated. The people in the hospital now are mostly older people and unvaccinated people. So if you're one of the holdouts, not too late. Not too late to get vaccinated. It's just, you look at the hospitalizations, it's hard to generalize about the entire country because it's good some places, bad some places. They're already talking about lifting mask mandates. That's a good thing, but I'm a little wary. Actually, I'm glad I don't have school-age children right now because it would be I would think, look, I think parents who are going through this, teaching and teaching from home and daycare, I'm just glad I had my kids when it was normal. Actually, I'm glad for my wife because she would have been doing all the work. But it has not been no fun. It hasn't been any fun. I understand why people are frustrated and ready to say, come on, let's define normal. All right. I say give it a couple of weeks. We'll define normal, but we've got to come out of this and figure out what's happening with this new BA.2 variant. And then doctors in Mass General, friends of mine were saying who were in on meetings, they said things are going to be better this summer. They're going to be better this summer, but we have to, in this final stage, stay together and fight the virus. What does an Asian American think? An Asian American thinks stay the course. Stay the course on the virus. Now's not the time to get frustrated and give up. All right. So there's that bit of news. Oh, see, I just usually say, all right. I should say, just stay the course. That's not indigestion. That's my sound effect. Oh, is he going to do that the entire show? No, no, I'm not going to do that the entire show. I'm not. Uh, I'm glad you're here with me. We're we're now at the 2 o'clock hour. This is Emil Muck's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. I call this the micro talk show, the AAPI and the AAXs and the ALLs, because you don't have to be an AAPI or an AAX. Me, an Asian American Filipino, an AAF. But you can be an ALL, all the rest of us, because all this is relevant to you. I'm a veteran, dare I say, award-winning news person. I've won a few awards. I mean, they're modest ones. I mean, the most was like $10,000. Or maybe 5,000. I would know. The most is $5,000. The Pulitzer is 10,000. I didn't win that. But the most is five, and that's like half a Pulitzer. That's what I like to say. But I've been a news person all these years, and I just see the news, and I want to explode. Hence, Emil Muck's Takeout. You can read my columns, incidentally, on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. This is, incidentally, episode 240. You've done 240 of these, huh, Emil? Yes, I've done 240. Some with the swish, some without the swish. But I've done 240 of these. This is an especially rich week because of the confluence of the Olympics. There's Black History Month. There's the Oscars today. We're going to talk about the Oscars. We're going to talk about the Oscars and the Uyghurs and Nathan Chen. And we talked about Omicron. We're going to talk about the RNC. My dad's birthday would have been today. It is today, had he been alive. All 117 years of him. But I want to talk about Eileen Gu. She is the golden girl of the Olympics. She's an American, so we talk about her, but she's skiing for China. And not just skiing, she's free skiing. You can't free ski. You can't free anything in China, right? I mean, it's kind of like, what are we going to do about this 18-year-old kid? She's confounding generations of Cold Warriorness amongst us. When we think about China, we think, but it's true what's happening in China. It's not, we're not just Cold Warrioring here now. There is something going on with China. And so it's difficult when you see Eileen Gu take to the slopes like she did yesterday. Incidentally, those towers by the slope structure, or whatever you call it, where they slide down, the make-believe mountain. They aren't nuclear. They look like nuclear silos, but apparently it was a steel mill. It's a decommissioned steel mill. And but you look at, I can't help but look at them and think, oh, someone's going to get nuked here, or someone has been nuked. Anyway, just a little of the flavor or the decor of the Olympics. You just can't help but look at Eileen Gu and just marvel at what she is doing. 18-year-old kid. This is the first time that they've had free skiing, at the Olympics. They authorized it a few years ago, and they said this is the year they're going to have it in China. And there she is, all of 18 and the best free skier in the world. And it was close yesterday. She competed in, she's in 3 events. She's in the half pipe, which is coming up this weekend. She's in the slope style where you just go down the slope. I guess it's, you know, just straight down. I mean, the half pipe, you sort of like, you, they take a pipe, cut it in half. I don't know what they do with the other half. I hope they recycle. But then you just, you slide on that half the pipe. So the slope style, half pipe, and this was big air, which means you go down the slope, and the whole idea is that you get big air. You're high up there, and you get 3 runs, and she did well enough in the first run, scored I think in the 90s, but then another woman caught her, and at some point she was just in third. And it was up to her in the last run to overtake and become first. And it was really something because you see her and she's biracial, half Asian. She's white father, Chinese mother. And you can only see that, from her eyes because she's all covered up and she's got her goggles on. But it was interesting to see her get set. She's visualizing. I mean, it was almost like a lesson, a master class in how to do big air. And it was kind of interesting to see her imagine herself upside down and going, if you're honest about what it is, freestyle or free skiing big air, it's how many circles can you go? 1 360, 2 360s, 3 360s, 4 360s. That's like 1,400. In the finals, she had to go 16. She had to go 4.5. And to go 4.5, you got to be way high before you run out of air. You're spinning and 3, 4.5. Oh, barely. And then you're down the hill. So she goes up, she does it. And of course, when you watch it to the untrained eye, and I have an untrained eye, I don't know, what the hell am I looking at? She's tossing and turning and grabbing her ski and she's flipping, going in all directions. And then she lands. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want her to die. I mean, when you go down a slope like that, it's death defying. And yet you see some of these girls, some girls fell and they just bounced back. So I don't know what they do. A lot of Bengay, or maybe there's like, I know they got padding or something. I doubt that, but they make the jump, and I'm just crossing my fingers. I don't want to see anyone fall. And Gu didn't. She landed. She stuck the land. And sometimes they're going down backwards. So this is, for an old guy like myself, it's kind of exciting to watch, this aerial feat and ultimate freedom, right? I mean, how free is it that you could do all this and land on your feet? It's death defying, China defying. I found it amazing. And then when they slow it down and you find out that she circled not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 4.5 times. 1,600. She'd never done it before. She'd never even thought about doing it. And she says afterwards in the interview that she called her mother and her mother said, do something conservative. And she said, no, I veto that. She said, I'm going for it. I'm going to do 1,600. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I don't know if that was calculated to say that, but when she said it, it made me think, kid's all right. I mean, if you think that there are a couple ways to look at Eileen Gu. Venal kid, our venal kid and her mother. Sort of like Brooke Shields and her mom at the early stages of Brooke Shields' career, right? The Blue Lagoon stage, and totally controlling. Tiger mom, right? And you can say, oh, there's something unseemly about that. But when you saw her do that jump yesterday, and then she came back and said, talked to my mom, I said, no, I'm going for it. We're going to do 1600, and I never tried it. Never tried it ever before. I just thought about it as I came up to the podium or as I came up to the hill. I'm going to do it. And of course she had to, because if she hadn't, she wouldn't have had scored as high as she did to overtake the person who was first. So it was quite a gutsy move. And I applaud her. And I say, this makes it complicated now for those of us who are looking at Gu and saying, okay, do we like her? Do we think that she should have skied for the Americans? Because this could have been the Americans' gold. And every time you say Eileen Gu in a news story in an American medium, you got to say American born skating for China. My term for it was, Asian Americans have a term, ABC, American born Chinese. Eileen Gu is ABCT, American born Chinese team. And that always stops you because you say, well, why? Why? Why Chinese team? But she says it's because she wants to inspire all these young Chinese women or girls that she saw during the summers when she visited China every summer since the time she was 2. She wants to be used as that kind of image for, well, Chinese girls and Chinese women, but also all women throughout the world. And it kind of made sense to me because they kept playing that little clip of her at the Catherine Delmar Burke, school program where she's dressed in her sailor outfit, talking about Title IX. They played that again last night. And the cynic in me says, okay, they're just trying to make it sound like she's some innocent. But if in fact she blew off her mother and said, look, Mom, forget the conservative stuff, I am going for it, well, then power to her. She represents something we haven't seen. A truly biracial, binational person who might be able to shame all the politicians to act like humans for once, who might be able to bridge our differences. Maybe I say maybe, because you want to just say, look, here she is, this new generation thumbing her nose at, she thumbed her nose at her mom. Would she thumb her nose at President Xi? See, that's the thing. That's why you like Gu. You say, yes, she's the new generation. She's the thing. She is modern 2022. But look at Peng Shuai. Peng Shuai, the tennis star, who was interviewed by L'Equipe, the French magazine, but very highly controlled. They had to submit the questions. There were PR people. I know what it's like to do interviews with subjects who are heavily PR'd. You ask a question, they look at their PR person, and then they turn to you and they shake their heads, or they just don't say anything. I know what it's like to be a reporter asking people like that. It's frustrating, and these people are so controlled. So how free is the free skier in that circumstance? Because Eileen Gu doesn't do interviews that aren't carefully managed and controlled. So here's Peng Shui giving her interview to the French, and you know the Peng Shui story. She she made an accusation of sexual harassment against a a high-ranking former Chinese official, a guy in his 70s, and as she made the accusation in social media back in toward the latter part of last year. She disappeared. She came back every now and then when China had to show the world that, hey, look, she's alive. And then they hit her again. And now, as the games begin, out she comes. And she essentially declares that everything is fine. Everything is fine. Nothing is wrong. I was misunderstood. Former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli, oh, misunderstanding. Everything is fine. And that tends to dampen all the feels I get about Eileen Gu being a new generation player, and how she's going to make things different in China. The one thing that Eileen Gu has going for her is that she's an American, unless she has renounced her citizenship, unless she has given up her passport. China does not allow dual citizenship. I've read varying reports, one in the Washington Post that said her name is not on the list of people who've renounced their citizenship, but there are people in who are China watchers, experts in Chinese law, who say China would never give in to a skier or an athlete. They are under that tight control, like Peng Shui. Maybe Eileen Gu breaks the mold. I hope for her sake she does. I hope for her sake she is the one who breaks the mold, because every example in the past does not end well. And here's this 18-year-old kid, gold. She's won one gold. She's got two more attempts at gold in the half pipe, where she really is. She wasn't the favorite really in big air. Big air, not big hair. Big hair would be Marge Simpson. She's Simpson's big hair. Marge Simpson. Oh, there's Marge's hair going by. No, I mean, she was not considered the best in big air, and it shows how close to the wire it was. But she obliterated a an American what, the Toyota Grand Prix Series in January. Just obliterated the field in half pipe in January. So she's a favorite there. She's a favorite in the slope style. She could win 3 medals. Those could be our medals. Well, ours. The USA's. But maybe this whole thing is, we should just forget about the nationalistic thing and just look at it as, hey, what a great individual effort. Maybe I'm just being naive there, right? What a great individual effort. No, China is going to want to glom onto her, and they are. They have. They're making her a star. I just hope things end up as well as they possibly can, and the Chinese see Eileen Gu as, oh, maybe she's given up her American citizenship. That would be the telltale sign, because I don't know if you could go back. It would be an international incident if she were to come back and say, I changed my mind. It happens. So the Goose story gets gooier because she's won gold. She might win a second and third gold in the time remaining for the games. We go through the next weekend, and she's got a couple of events there. But between now and then, we're all goo watchers, right? We're all like, what's up with Eileen Goo? She's watchable. She's the watchable Asian American because she's done something that no one has ever considered. She is the gold medalist playing not for us, the USA, but for our enemy. So that makes it complicated. Meantime, we root for Nathan Chen. Man, what a skate. What a skate in the short program. Tough for Vincent Zhou, who had COVID and probably won't skate this the rest of the games, but he did win a silver in the short program team, and I like Vincent Zhou. I just think it's just sad that time's not working for him. He's running out of time, so we're going to have to see how he pulls through. So Vincent Zhou, he's getting a lot of attention. He put out some things on Instagram, which are great. Nathan Chen still has more individual events. So, and he's like untouchable. The question for other Asian Americans is, when these guys are so good, do they help or hurt the model minority idea? You know, I mean, even with Eileen Gu, how many times have they mentioned her 1580 SAT score? Oh, she did a 1080 and a 1440 and a 1600, stunt on her skis. Oh, 1600, not, that's even better than her 1580. Her 1580 SAT score. I mean, so you got to wonder if this is going to have some kind of residual effect on Asian Americans. That Asian Americans are going to, wow, they're going to look at us and say, you don't speak full Mandarin and score 1580s on your SAT and do a 1600 on a free ski downhill? No. I guess I'm not good enough. See, that's the whole model minority thing. It's the positive or the positive or the negative positive stereotype. And you see what kind of mentality you need to overcome that positive or that negative positive stereotype. It is a negative positive to say, oh, the model minority. I mean, when Vincent Zhou got COVID, no fault of his own, he was asymptomatic. He didn't know, tested positive, had a quarantine, had to pull out of the games. The mental strength to combat, oh, I tried so hard to isolate. I tried so hard to not get COVID, and I got it. So my heart goes out to Palo Alto and Vincent Zhou. He's going to bounce back. Like he said, it only sets up his comeback, a greater comeback. And he will come back, I'm sure. Let's hope. All right, so the Olympics, I do want to mention something about the Uyghurs because here I am. We're talking about the Olympics, but every time we talk about the Olympics, we have to remember the Uyghurs. We have to remember the Uyghurs because the Uyghurs are why Joe Biden didn't show up. There's a diplomatic boycott of the games, the US and other countries, because of the treatment of the Uyghurs. I think these games have done more to publicize who the Uyghurs are, what the Uyghurs are. I've said Uyghur more in the last 2 weeks than I have in the last 5, 10 years. The Uyghurs, Uyghur. I mean, it's a serious thing, and I've seen some media organizations, excuse me, use the term Uyghur Muslims because that's what it is. It's the Uyghur Muslims, and people in China are reacting to a Muslim minority. And a Muslim minority, because, China has more than 50 ethnic minorities, and the Uyghurs are an ethnic religious minority. But the Muslim thing enables them to be branded as terrorists and as enemies of the state. That's what's unfair. And that's what leads to all these other unfairnesses, which some people call a form of cultural genocide, but it actually is just flat out genocide. When you consider the kind of forced sterilization, the kind of taking of family members, those aspects are in the legal definition of genocide. You don't have to have like the Pol Pot in Cambodia kind of mass killings, but we are talking about a mass killing of Uyghur culture. And we are talking about up to 3 million people placed in re-education camps since 2017, and then placed into forced labor that Western companies participate in. This is the Uyghur situation. And I have some friends who are African Americans, and this is Black History Month. And I mention Uyghur, and their eyes roll, and I say, well, wait a minute. You got more in common with the Uyghurs than you think. They're placed in camps. Their freedom is restricted. After re-education, they are placed in forced labor arrangements. Some people call tantamount to slavery. Have you no compassion for the Uyghurs? And then Joe Biden is part of this boycott against China, doesn't go to the games. But who is on the front lines fighting on behalf of the Uyghurs? Linda Thomas Greenfield. Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is the United States ambassador to the UN, who stands up and says the Uyghurs are being tortured, the Uyghurs are being mistreated by the Chinese. She is the face, the voice of the United States at the UN. And when China comes back and says, well, wait a minute, United States, how can you talk about human rights? You've got human rights issues. Human rights issues. They got to go back to slavery. They got to go back to, they might bring up George Floyd. They might bring up how African Americans are treated. And they're saying this to a proud African American female who is standing up for the United States and standing up for the rights of Uyghurs, Linda Thomas Greenfield. I think that takes a lot of wind out of the Beijing rebuttal. So let us not forget the Uyghurs. I mean, it's tough. It kind of takes the enjoyment out of the games a bit. But we can look at individual athletes like Nathan Chen, like tonight, Chloe Kim, the Korean American snowboarder. And we can observe Eileen Gu and see what happens to her. We can peacefully coexist with the fact that we're interested in these icons of Asianness in America, born in America, even though Gu is skiing for China. But we can look at them and also acknowledge that these games are being played under a kind of protest, a boycott, a diplomatic boycott, because of the way the Chinese have treated the Uyghurs. I mean, there's almost no question. China denies it, of course, but there's almost no question that the Uyghurs have been placed in these camps, have been put in these labor situations, forced labor. And it's funny that the Uyghur, who was a torchbearer, China kind of like flaunted a Uyghur. And this is the PR move of China, right? They had, I want to get her name right. Her name is, God, her name is Dinagir Yilamujang. Dinagir Yilamujang. She's 20 years old, cross-country skier. Good. I mean, they'd say good for a Uyghur, but she finished way in the back of the pack, like in her one race, and then they didn't let her talk to the media. And you're supposed to she finished 42nd in a field of 65. And apparently you're supposed to allow athletes to talk in a free zone, but they whisked her away. It would have been interesting to see what she had to say about how she was treated, how she became the torchbearer of the entire games. But it was PR. It was PR. So that's the geopolitical politics here. But maybe, see, the geopolitical politics of this lets you see how strong China is to do whatever they want. It's all PR. And is Eileen Gu playing into it, or is she part of it? If she's part of it, then she's a good skier, but she's part of the sham. If she's playing into it, then she's a good skier and she's innocent and she's walking into this power, and maybe the only thing that saves her is her innocence. I know she's going to be fascinating the next 4 years. I don't know if she's going to be at Stanford. They may not let her go to Stanford. They may say, okay, go to Stanford. You're coming back, girl. We've got our sights on you. Look, and this happens now already. If you read my ALDEF column, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I mean, I mentioned how Christopher Wray, the FBI director, said there's a new case about China stealing corporate secrets, these corporate espionage cases. They've got about one every 12 hours, Christopher Wray said. There's like 2,000 of these cases that he's aware of. And China isn't a cuddly panda. We must remember that. So Look, I just hope things work out well for Eileen Gu. I do. I mean, San Franciscan, got a soft spot in my heart for a San Franciscan, but maybe she is the beginning of something new, something we haven't seen before in terms of diplomatic relations. I mean, what can I say? I mean, this has happened in other Cold War situations. Russia, ballerinas, Cubans, had baseball players. I mean, this happens. But usually people say, "Oh, I'm in America. I'm here. Thank goodness, freedom. Free at last. Free at last." Right? It doesn't usually happen the other way. Where I live in Seacliff and go to Burke School and I got a 1580 and I like to play music and yeah. Well, I guess if if the Chinese placate your desires, as long as you do what they want and don't cross them, they won't cross you. But that to me is not freedom. And as I said, Eileen Gu may never be as free as she is when she's twirling in circles up in the air on her skis. So, time to mention the Oscars, I think. You know, so we mentioned Gu and Chen and the Oscars and the Uyghurs. And got to mention the Oscars. We mentioned Omicron. Shang-Chi was a good movie. I like Shang-Chi. It was the Asian American movie of the summer. There was even a guy named Emil. And I mentioned this, like, no one ever told me there was an Emil. He was a kind of villainous, ogreish looking guy in a cage, and he gets his butt beat. But bit part. But it was a fun movie. It was nominated for visual effects, as should all the Marvel movies. I think Spider-Man got a nod too for visual effects. That's their category. And it's too bad because there were a lot of good actors, but they're not going to be recognized because they are overshadowed by the technology. I think that's too bad. I mean, the movie made money, the actors were all good, but maybe I would have given Aquafina supporting actress. I don't know. I just think that you're in a vehicle like Shang-Chi and it's like the ride. The visual effects are the ride of the movie. And so, of course, that gets the nomination. And the actors, they're just on the ride. They're not the ride, they're on the ride. And they don't get nominated. Anyway, um, for the first time because of the pandemic, I mean, I remember last year I was able to see a lot of movies that were nominated. Because I was in the habit of going to the movies this year, I didn't. I think I saw the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, Don't Look Up. That was a great movie. Funny, serious. It was deep. Don't Look Up. That's my favorite. I mean, I'll see the other movies, but I I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with the Oscars. I guess I'll see as many of them streaming as I can. But Shang-Chi, great visual effects. See it on Disney Plus. But I use this to mention Aquafina because Aquafina over the weekend, her real name Nora Lum, made news because she quit Twitter, which isn't necessarily a bad idea. I mean, I keep one eye on social media. I'm doing this on social media. Social media is important to me. But I don't look at social media for my self-esteem. I look at social media to communicate with others in a limited fashion. I mean, I'm not always on it. But apparently, Aquafina was trolled on Twitter because people gave her criticism about her black scent, the African American sound. They call it African American Vernacular English, AAVE. And she did it a lot in rap videos and the, 2012. And so a lot of people, now that she is a bona fide movie star, I mean, she's a movie star. When you consider Shang-Chi, you consider Crazy Rich Asians, you consider a TV show. Well, TV show was a launching pad to the movies. Over the weekend, she wrote, "I'll see you in a few years, Twitter, per my therapist. To my fans, thank you for continuing to love and support someone who wishes they could be a better person for you. I apologize if I ever fell short in anything I did. You're in my heart always." I thought, wow, you know, I like Aquafina. I think she's got a lot of guts and courage. The fact that she did what she did, she broke out and she let her voice be known. I mean, she's from an urban area. You're from an urban area and you deal in essentially black culture, rap and hip hop, and the sounds. A lot of people say, hey, wait a minute, what is this person using? This is cultural appropriation. See, I think that's a little harsh on appropriation or appreciation. I just think the fact that Aquafina is now in therapy is actually a good thing because the sooner you can learn more about yourself from the inside out, the better. And so I actually think it's a positive thing she left Twitter. She said in some other tweets, to clarify, I'm retiring from the ingrown toenail that is Twitter. Not retiring from anything else, even if I wanted to. And I didn't drunkenly hit someone with a shoehorn and now escaping as a fugitive. Also am available on all of the socials that don't tell you to kill yourself. And I guess that's the thing about Twitter. It's full of people who will come at you and criticize you and make you feel bad. There's a lot of hateful stuff in Twitter that came at her because she's a non-black person of color who criticized her for the use of Asian or African American vernacular, which I don't blame her at all. I think she said her piece. She says, my immigrant background allowed me to carve an American identity off the movies and TV shows I watched, the children I went to public school with, my undying love and respect for hip hop. I think as a group, Asian Americans are still trying to figure out what that journey means for them, what is correct and where they don't belong. Then she said, but as a non-black POC, person of color, I stand by the fact that I will always listen and work tirelessly to understand the history and context of AAVE, African American Vernacular English, But I must emphasize, to mock, belittle, or be unkind in any way possible at the expense of others is simply not my nature. It never has, and it never was. Meaning, it wasn't appropriation, it was appreciation. She was in the culture, she wasn't appropriating it. And look, let's just call what happens when she gets harshly criticized. She's a big Asian American star now. And you might say what's happening to her is maybe a kind of jealousy, but it's unfair. And I know when I saw that news story break over the weekend, I wanted to make sure that I let people know Aquafina is all right. No misappropriation. And like I said, I'm glad she's going through, undergoing therapy because therapy will help her be stronger, help her to know that the best way to handle these kind of things is self love. Self love. There's no shame. People are trying to shame her, people are trying to make her feel bad. But real fans of Aquafina will let her know there's no reason to feel any shame at all. Although you couldn't win an Oscar, Aquafina. Just kidding. No, I liked her in that movie. So, oh, I can't say so as my transition. I say, I liked Aquafina in that movie. So they're the Oscars. Denzel Washington got another nomination for Macbeth. I want to see Macbeth. I saw the first couple minutes, and then I I couldn't. To get into Shakespeare, you got to be ready to dwell a little bit. And I was in a short attention span kind of mood, but I want to see that. I think he was also nominated for. He's got the most nominations for actors. I think Roman Israel Esquire. That's a great movie. One of my favorite movies. But so yeah, I saw the Lucille Ball movie, The Ricardos. Nicole Kidman was nominated. That she's one of my favorite actresses, but I don't know that movie. She was good as Lucy. Not so not crazy about the movie, but yeah, there's a lot of good things to catch up on if you're an Oscar person. Theater, movies, yeah. No, no, no Shang-Chi though. No Shang-Chi. Okay, a couple other things. The last thing. Oh, RNC. I wasn't talking about the RNC. Can you imagine the the uh, the RNC is now engaged in a kind of, I I guess it's not the RNC so much. It's the entire Republican Party. And I mention this because even in our community, even in the Asian American community, Republicans are about 30%. And what is going on with the Republican Party? They're like the RNC is calling January 6th a legitimate form of public discourse, which doesn't make sense. McConnell is saying, "Hey, wait a minute, that's bull. This is an insurrection." So I'm worried for you, Republicans. And you should be worried if Emil Guillermo is worried about you. But I am worried about what's going on with the Republicans. We need Republicans who know what the truth is. And now Mitch McConnell is saying to the RNC, hey, the censor of lawmakers like Liz Cheney, like Adam Kinzinger, that's wrong. And to call January 6th a legitimate form of political discourse, that's wrong. We'll just have to see what happens. We will. And then finally, it's my dad's birthday today. It's my dad's birthday today. He would have been 117. And regular viewers, listeners know that my father's story really is, my story. I mean, I've taken it, I've made it into my one-man show. I've toured the country, did different festivals doing my Amok monologues, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again this year. I hope to be in a theater by the end of the year doing my Amok monologues. I think it'd be like 2.0 or 3.0. I mean, it's a new version. But I hope to do it live. And if not live, then we'll just do it in this kind of venue, which is, actually become my preferred venue. But I think about my father because I found another document just in time for his birthday. It just happened that, I got a little prompt said, hey, do you know about this record? And here was his draft card. And so he was 35 when he was draftable or ordered to register, which was just about the age where, they don't draft you. That's either too old or, but in World War II, they needed people. So they made some exceptions. They got some people who were older. He could have gotten in. And I say that because had he gotten in, it would have made a big difference in our lives. I wasn't born yet. I wasn't born for another, 15, 16 years. But the idea is, had he been a soldier, he would have been able to participate in the GI Bill. He would have been given the ticket to the middle class, which would have given us a much different life than we had. Because when he signed up for the draft at age 35, he was still a single man. Because why? Because of the way Filipino males were treated when they came to the United States. They couldn't vote. They couldn't own land. The jobs they were given, if they didn't come recognized as an illustrado or as if he just came as a regular rank and file Filipino on the dollar steamship, he was just going from restaurant job to restaurant job. And had he gone to the military, that might have given him a little foothold in society to buy a house, to maybe get a better job. Like some of his friends who were cooks with him were also, and they ended up being cooks at Letterman Hospital. They ended up being cooks in the Army at the Presidio. And my dad just stayed as a union cook, going from restaurant to restaurant to boarding house situation to boarding house situation. And that was his life. the wandering Filipino. And wouldn't you know, he kept wandering until he met my aunt, my Auntie Joy. She wasn't my Auntie Joy then, but my Auntie Joy was shopping in for vegetables, and my dad was a cook. He knew vegetables, so hey, let me help you pick them out. And you have a baby, let me help you carry your groceries. He was a nice guy. And the Filipinos back then, you'd see another Filipino, and you would just see family. That's the way it was in the 40s and 50s in America, in San Francisco, where they probably had, between San Francisco, Stockton, and Los Angeles, they probably had more Filipinos than any other place in America. But you saw a Filipino and you just said, pare. They were comadre, compadre. And so my dad helped Auntie Joy with her groceries. Auntie Joy had I believe she either had a baby or she was pregnant. But she brought my dad up to her place, invited him in because she had a whole group of Filipino comadres there. And they were always looking for a nice young Filipino male. And that's how my father met my mother. And that's really how the Filipino community got started in the 40s and 50s. They created the Filipino baby boom after the war. My father did not go into the war. He was not drafted. Turns out his asthma kept him out of the war. But he was part of this community in San Francisco, and he found my mother. And that's what another chapter, another story within Emil Amok's Takeout. Anyway, I honor my dad today. He would have been 117. He'd still be alive if he hadn't eaten all that pork. Although 117, that would have been a tough life. So anyway, yeah, when I see my father, I have so many stories about my father. Like the time he went to baseball games, the time he threw the ball at me out in Golden Gate Park, and the day he died. That's in the show. That's in the show. So I'll let you know when we do that. Hopefully sometime in 2022. All right. So a show chock full of things. Gooey Gold, Nathan Chen, Vincent Joe, the Oscars, the Uyghurs, the RNC, Omicron, my dad's birthday. Oh my goodness. Is it like this all the time, Emil? Well, we try. We try. Hey, thank you for being here. Regular listeners of the show know that at this point, I say all sorts of things. Of course I do. Yeah. Follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok. Go on amok.com and catch all the replays. I put the replays there. You can read more. Go to ALDEF, the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. I got a piece on, I got my goo piece up there. And maybe I'll have something in time for the Super Bowl. I don't know. The Super Bowl's coming up, but it's not until Sunday. You don't have to think about it yet. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. If you just caught us, Maybe you're watching on Twitter at Emil Amok. Maybe you are. Maybe you're watching at Facebook, Emil Guillermo, or on no Facebook. Yeah, Emil Guillermo on Facebook or emilguillermo.media on Facebook. Maybe you're watching on YouTube on the Emil Guillermo channel. Wherever you're watching, we're live if you show up at 2 p.m. Pacific or a little earlier, like 1:45, 1:50. And then you can participate in chat. You can go to our chat and you could say like Nick. Nick said, "Happy birthday, Daddy." Yeah. It's my yeah. It's my dad's birthday. I I I have to say this about my father. I didn't appreciate him. I didn't appreciate him before I understood the history. I didn't appreciate him before I understood the history. And I didn't learn that history until I went to Harvard. That's the honest God truth. I did not really know the history until I went deep into the stacks and found that history. That's part of Emil Amok's or the Amok monologues that I do about my father. So we'll have to this year by 2022, we're going to do it live somewhere. The variant is going to die down. We're all going to be vaccinated. We'll be in theaters and we'll be able to like do the show live like I did in 2017, 2018, 2019. And then not in 2020, not in 2021, maybe in 2022. I mean, it's amazing. Just going over that list of the years, how life stopped 2020. So, as I say, like us, friend us, Facebook, emilguillermo.media. You can check out replays at amok.com. I told you where to get the column. So, yeah. So, thank you for being here for show 240. Thank you to our friends all over the world. All over the world, we have friends. We got our friend Nicholas. He says, out of Africa music in the background. No, this is not out of that. Don't say that, Nicholas. They'll pull it for copyright infringement. No, this is not out of Africa music. This is rights-free synthesized music that I composed with an app, with a with an app. And I like it because it's calm and because I can slow down. It's like Valium to music. Just kind of helps the silences. So that's the music. That's the music. So anyway, regular listeners of the show know that it was true on episode 1. It's true on episode 240. We come to this part of the show and we say, I assure you, I just assure you that if you feel like you don't belong, if you feel like someone's dissed you, oh, Aquafina, you should listen to this part of the show only. Or the American skater who skates for China and fell the other day and was like blasted in social media. It's social media. That's what's wrong. You girls, you should all listen to this section of the show. And I used to give elbow hugs, but now I've upped the game. I put this hand here underneath the this is the French horn arm, and this one here over the shoulder. And I just give yourself that you belong, you're good enough. Suni Lee kept saying that when she won, off the balance. You're good enough. You're good enough. I mean, everyone's mindful these days. You got to be mindful, and you got to be full of self-love, because that's the best antidote to the hate and the shame that people make you feel. Self-love, the good kind, the good kind. And so as I want for me, I want for you. Oh, as I wish for me, I wish for you. I'm even going to take off my glasses when I say this, so he means business. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till tomorrow. Mahal Kita.